And we're live. So welcome to episode 3 of the Entrepreneur's Handbook podcast. This is season 2, and we're doing things a bit differently this season. So as you can see, today I've got Stephen with me. Stephen is the main editor for Entrepreneur's Handbook, and he's taken over the reins and has been doing it for... How long have you been doing it for now, Stephen?
At least a year, I think, if not more. We shared it for a little bit before that, maybe.
Yeah, so whenever you send an article to Entrepreneur's Handbook and you want to get it published with us, here's the guy who's going to look at it. So send all your hate mail to him.
I'm the one that turns it down, yeah.
Yeah, if it gets accepted, then it's me. And we're chatting for this. What we're going to do with these episodes is meet each Monday at this time, and we're just going to go for the news and some of the latest stuff coming out of the startup world. So if you're listening live, let us know, pop a message in the comments. If you've got any opinions on what we're saying as well, pop it in. If you agree with us, if you disagree with us, either way is fine with us. And there's a few interesting things happening last week, but Stephen had a little adventure the weekend himself. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I had my first ever Tough Mudder experience. I think you might have done one as well, no?
Oh, I've done a dozen, but who's counting? It's not a competition. The one I did was actually 18 miles in the Scottish mountains when it was hailing and foggy. But we've both been outdone by the Zuck, haven't we? So I don't know who's seen this, but Mark Zuckerberg has done a challenge called the Murph in 39 minutes. And it's like 100 pull-ups, a 2-mile run, 100 press-ups, or 300 press-ups even, and over 20 kilogram weighted vest. And me and Stephen just found this funny because 2 or 3 years ago, who remembers the Congress thing where everyone called him a lizard and it just so out of place, and he just had this public perception of people not thinking he was very cool. And he's gone from that to winning jiu-jitsu tournaments and being ultra fit. And how do you feel about that?
I remember as well the one of him surfing. Do you remember the picture of him being pulled along the surfboard and he had a full face of white sun cream? He was like the opposite of cool tech bro. I think it's quite cool, to be honest, for him. I think he does have a bit of a perception problem. I don't know if this is encouraged by himself or if this is encouraged by his PR team, but I think as well, I think I'd messaged you earlier, when you've got that much money, some of these doors open a little easier. He's probably got the best PT trainer in the world. Any diet, no problem. So it's certainly more accessible to him to go and level up on these challenges.
Yeah, and we were talking about it because what's going to happen in the future now is going to be in 10 years' time that everybody in the Olympics is just going to be the billionaire games because they can afford all of this next generation biotech and all of this, a personal person doing everything for them. And before it was you could have those advantages, but now those advantages I think are so massive with money. So that Murph challenge, I think I heard another podcast where that puts him in the top 15 in the world. So how can you be top 1%, top 0.01% intelligence and money, but also fitness wise? And is that a thing that's now going to happen, especially we have AI and all these things where the money is going to be concentrated in a smaller number of hands? Are we then going to see that those people can just live super lives? And you talked about in your latest news as well, right, about what's going on with some of the billionaires and their fitness fanaticism at the moment.
Yeah, there's a story that broke last week about an entrepreneur called Brian Johnson. I think I should double check that. But he was a former tech bro who sold his company to PayPal, and he has been injecting his son's blood into him as part of a cookie scheme to stay young. And I believe there's no scientific backing behind that process.
Yeah, I think as Peter Thiel said that death is just a problem to be solved. And it's kind of scary, right? Because before maybe this all sounded crazy like science fiction, but now we are getting to the stage where some of the science is enabling people to make some really big differences to their health. Maybe not live forever, but if they can extend their lives by say 10, 20 years, 30 years even, and still be mentally capable, then is that just a thing of where poor people die from other diseases and the rich people get to live forever? Is what kind of society are we now moving towards? It's a interesting challenge that we have now.
Yeah, Yeah. I think I wrote that's what is the morality of immortality? Like, is it
Yeah.
morally acceptable that the top 1% can now out earn us and now outlive us? I would say no, but I can't see any way these treatments would be affordable to the everyday person.
Yeah.
It's hardly
it's
like
also,
just going to get a shot at the doctors, is it?
yeah, like for people watching this live as well, we can see your comments. If you comment through, what do you think? Do you think it's okay for people to be able to have these treatments that are so exclusive that make such a huge difference to their lifespan?
Well, they
And
might make a difference to their lifespan. It's very up in the air, I believe.
That's the thing. Like, let's
Yeah.
not give any credence to the blood thing, right? So, if there's no scientific backing to the things we just mentioned there, it was just an interesting story that this guy was injecting his son's blood. But I think the other thing that's dangerous about that too is that if people at this kind of level are doing that and telling people about it, is that they're going to encourage other people to do it as well when there has no scientific backing. So it's this outside influence that some of these people now have. Are they going to encourage some quite dangerous practices, right? Because you never know what's going to... Injecting blood obviously isn't generally very safe, and don't try this at home. But what happens if people start doing that and people are being attacked for their blood, or what? Like, there's so many different angles that could take.
Yeah, I believe after that he injected his blood into his father's blood, and according to the Instagram post, that is the first ever multi-generational blood transfusion.
And there's probably a good reason why it's the first one, right? Because nobody else has thought it's a smart idea to do that.
Yeah. I just thinking there on the Zuckerberg challenge, maybe that is the way to finally answer like who is the best tech entrepreneur. Like Jeff Bezos of late has been hitting the gym or the steroids or both, but maybe they should all have to do the challenge and see who comes out on top.
Billionaire games.
I would assume Elon Musk would be last.
Yeah,
it doesn't strike me as a fitness man.
We've got the other ones who are in the public eye, right? So I'm sure there's a few 90-year-old billionaires out there who maybe... Well, to be honest, I don't think I could get... I don't know if I could do the Murph challenge. Do you think you could do it?
I'm not even sure I could do it without the weight vest, yeah.
And in 39 minutes, when you think about it, 2-mile run. So how long would that take? The 2-mile run is, 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers. I shouldn't have tried to do maths on a live recording. That was a bad idea. Well, a mile takes me... That's about 10 minutes, let's say, that would take me. And then afterwards doing 100 pull-ups. I don't know if I could do 100 pull-ups. I think that would take me a really long time. And that's considering I used to do these races quite often. I wouldn't be able to do 100 pull-ups in one go. No way. Has anybody in the audience done the Murph challenge as well? Let us know. What else has been happening, like outside of the fitness billionaire world?
Well, as today is Apple's latest conference, developer conference, whatever they call it. And we're expecting to see them finally unveil their first ever VR or AR headset. So far, I've only seen little pictures of what it might look like. Some kind of like plastic band around the head, and then the same goggles that we've become accustomed to. But I'm interested to see. This is either a turning point or it's another one that just proves that no one's interested in this concept.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we had the Google Glass a few years ago, and how bad the reaction was to that. But then we still kept hearing like AR and VR is the future. Sorry, say again?
I love the demo video of Google Glasses. But it looked cool in practice. But yeah, you're right. It was immediately shot down. It's like nobody wanted a part of it.
Yeah, it's just the use case. Like, I know, for example, one of the people that's been on the podcast, right? Oluwaseyi Sosanya. So his company is Gravity Sketch, and they do VR headsets for like designing really complicated products. So it's used by car companies, by trainer companies, sneaker companies for the Americans. And that seems like a good use of it, right? But just a general everyday use, I don't know, because we have the problem. I think we've both seen this as being editors, where online, the discourse is about how everybody loves working from home, everybody loves being disconnected, people don't want that. But this is the kind of the Twitter sphere, whereas obviously a lot of people do like going out. A lot of people do like to have separation between work and home. And I think sometimes some of the products are being led by that minority of people who maybe really, well, I suppose I don't think I've seen many people really want AR and VR. Are you seeing that? Have you seen many people be like, I can't wait until these headsets are ready? I don't see that at all.
There's a bit of an ecosystem, yeah, with the Twitter folk, gaming folk. I think a lot of people seem to have overlap with NFTs too, because they sort of see this as a window to make these tokens usable in some way.
Yeah.
But I think the majority, I think it's just such a huge concept that it's very hard to accept that you would just wake up and stick your headset on and that's you plugged in for your work or plugged in for your social activity.
And that's the thing, I think it makes sense for, say, the gaming world, right? Because when it's a specific task you're trying to do with it, but a general, as how we have with phones, right? But I guess the same thing, like we could just be on the wrong side of history where 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they said, oh, nobody's ever going to need a phone in their pocket. Why does a phone need a screen? So it's just interesting because do we want to stake our predictions there? But I just can't see it being. I would always rather go, well, both in the UK, but going to a pub and seeing a friend there, rather than, oh, let's stick on our headsets and pretend to see each other and like our avatars. And obviously, you're a big fan of Metaverse and how the characters look in that, right?
Yeah. I think as recently as 2 or 3 weeks ago, they announced that they were sort of slightly pivoting towards more AI stuff. So it's not in any way Meta saying they've given up on it, but I do think that's the first sign that it's not been adopted as fast as they hoped. And no wonder the amount of stuff, this money to buy the headsets. I mean, they're predicting today that Apple's might cost $3,000. So I'm not quite sure what target market is being anticipated to buy that.
So, but the thing with Apple, obviously, with their track record of creating new product categories, are they going to be the ones who actually make this mainstream in some way? And what could they actually do to make it mainstream? What do you think could be their big idea that makes their headset so different to everybody else's? I haven't looked into it too much myself.
Well, I read one very noticeable absence from all their chat about it, and that is the word metaverse. So either Apple is trying to suggest this is different, or they're just suggesting that it's not what they want to call this new world. So quite possibly, we might see Apple's thing more focused on the third-party software that comes with it. Perhaps it works with the nice design tools. I've got a friend who works with furniture, and we've always said it would be quite cool to go into a room and see the space designed as, like, walk a client through a room that you've designed for them. But that again would be a very specific 10-minute use, headset on, walk around, disconnect again. I'm just not sure who buys it at that cost. And I know Apple's already cut its projections down. I think initially they thought it was going to be 3 million units, and I read on someone's newsletter the other day they think maybe 900,000. Now,
that's quite big.
For comparison, they've sold 195 million watches so far. So
yeah, at the
some way to go to catch up.
At 3,000 price point, right? That's 3 times the latest iPhone, or even double, depending where you're getting it from, which version. And you just can't see that being a mass product, right? Because how many people, especially in the times we're in at the moment, right, with the cost of living crisis, all these things going on, how many people are just going to, you can maybe have it amongst the tech early adopters, but it's going to have to come down significantly to really be mass adoption. And maybe they are focusing more on the B2B market, right? Because that's for, like, all the uses we've heard so far. Like I said, for the furniture shop, it would be a business expense, right? So if by doing that, that means your customers are served better, would it be for you to show the customers, or for you to better advise the customers? Like, what kind of use would you have in that way there? And for those of you who don't know, so Stephen, in a previous life, ran a furniture shop, right? So maybe give them a bit more context there as well.
Yeah, we used to do shop fitting, so like the process of designing and refitting a bar, a restaurant or something. So I always thought you could possibly both stick headsets on, and you're standing in a room that's been completely ripped out of everything, but the client can actually see what will soon be the finished version, perhaps even as much as interact with some of the stuff, and then you use that visual world to... I know there's some very small concepts of that now, that you can change the colour of paint on your wall with like your iPad. You can look and it can tell, but that's obviously through the screen, not through your eyes. So I think in the design world, and obviously Apple caters to the design world, I think there will be lots of uses, and that's possibly why Apple's not sort of marketing it as a metaverse device, because maybe they don't see it as a always on kind of thing. It's like a used for very specific apps in their ecosystem.
And the thing is, when you look at the design world as well, it's not a small niche, right? So you look at Figma, you look at Canva, and how big those companies got. And maybe there's obviously a huge market for different tech startups and their design companies as well. But it's just whether all of them would really need a VR headset to do their job effectively. So, for example, as if you were running your like furniture shop at the time, would you have been able to justify a $3,000 cost for that product, or would you have bought it yourself, do you think?
I would say no for us because we were small scale, but I could imagine if you were running multiple job sites at the same time, the client bit was always the hardest bit. Well, it's the same with any job, isn't it? So I think there's definitely scope for it, and we know that the cost of sort of full spec iMacs, etc., are multi-thousands of pounds. So it's not out of the question that Apple's sort of high-end market will just be quite happy to buy one. And I guess we know it'll be well designed. We know it'll look very nice. We know it'll work very well, and we know it'll all work within the ecosystem. You know, the computer, the watch, the phone. So they've got that. Whereas Meta's obviously was its own separate thing. There is no ecosystem around Meta's one, aside your Facebook login. But I'm not sure. Do you want to stake a prediction? Oh, go for it.
I'm just having a quick look at what's the mock-ups and the leaked news so far. So this is on the at the Verge.
It's the one with the silicon band kind of around the back of the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Single greatest thing that could happen to this industry. So people listening as well, with these ones, we're going to be a bit more casual. As you can see, like I'm currently reading the screen, so I can do all that kind of stuff while we're recording too. It expects a load of short-term sales, but positive reviews so it's getting positive reviews. Lightweight, extraordinarily high spec. But again, the thing comes down to let's say are you a console man yourself? Do you game much?
I have a PS5, but the virtual stuff has always made me feel very sick. So I don't have a headset. I've only ever tried it once, and I've got very woozy. It would take a bit of getting used to.
Because the challenge with the specs now is how many games or how many use cases actually need the really high specs. And it's the idea that you want to have it high enough that it just works, but where do you go from that? Because how do you keep making it better each year? If you can handle everything with the first product, then do they just keep making it cheaper? What's their end game next? Obviously, with iPhones, they keep trying to make it better and better and better.
Yeah, I think that's the thing they can't rule out with Apple. That every product has been iterated to the point where they've basically completed it. You know, the iPhone is done. It's in its finished form as a product. They've figured out the watch. I think they're on about 5 or 6 now, maybe more than that. The headphones they figured out after a couple. So I think maybe if they're going to keep at it, by sort of version 3 or 4, maybe we could have a more mass market headset that's slightly cheaper.
So what's interesting here about how they're doing it as well, they're using something called pass-through, which means that rather than it being see-through and you can see things around in the room, they've got the cameras on the outside, which then beams it into you, which is good because then obviously you can get a clearer vision and then you can just flick that button on and off. So it does kind of feel a bit weird that you're putting something on to block your eyes that's then showing you what's on the other side of that.
So that may explain why some people think that it could be used as a screen. Like people can literally ditch the computer screen because they can just have it in front of their eyes. which
Yeah,
is
which
another
I just
strange
don't know how I feel
concept.
about. Like, maybe I'll be completely wrong, and in a few years' time, you'll see both of us recording this podcast with a thing on our heads. But it's one of the things of is the screen broken at the moment? What's the need? What's the problem it's solving if you're using a screen in front of your eyes rather than using a laptop screen? And how good is that for your eyes, for example, as well, right? Like, I can't imagine it's great for your eyes to have a screen right in front of it.
Because we already need less screen time, don't we? Not an excuse for more screen time.
Yeah. And one of the problems, obviously, of eyes is that you should be, I don't know if you've heard this, where every 20 minutes, you're supposed to look and get an object 20 meters away or something like that for 20 seconds to reset your eyes to basically make sure that you do less damage. If you've got a thing on your head, how does your eyes, like, your eyes be completely dilated? Yeah. Or how does that work? Yeah. I don't know if anybody listening is more about
that. Its use cases, I think that is what Meta's stumbled at a wee bit right now. But that release demo video that showed Mark Zuckerberg in his virtual house, and then he floated off into space and he played like games with his friends who were aliens around the table and stuff. It didn't really say why anybody needed that. And I wonder if that is why Apple has just ignored the metaverse word entirely for now. And it's just going to be a device that helps certain people do certain things, at least for now.
It's also interesting because Apple has that cool factor, right? And is it going to be that they maybe have something quite similar to what Facebook has, but they just design it a bit better and it looks a bit cooler than people were saying it's the next best thing, even though the actual underlying functionality is quite similar?
No, for Meta got their new headset out just this week to beat the news, and their current Quest Pro is now $1,000. So that's a quite significant difference in the sort of entry point cost. So again, I guess Apple device is going to have to offer something that can't, whatever that may be.
I guess it's also, even at that lower price point, does anybody still want it? Because even at $1,000,
so sales have started to fall. Yeah.
And how do you? It's not maybe just jump the gun. Yeah,
that'd be my guess. I think maybe you're right. We're just too early. It's such a societal shift to ask people to just get on board with.
I think it's also like you said, like the wider challenges about, I think, us having too much screen time, having the separation between reality and the virtual world, and can we unplug or not unplug? And I think those questions make it a bit more difficult for people to say, oh yeah, put on a headset, because later for gaming it would be great, right? If there's different use cases for design tools, but as a general overall tool. And if you're watching this also later on, let us know if you disagree with us, right? Because if you disagree with us after you're watching this later, you can leave a comment and we'll see it. But if you're watching this live and we also live at the same time, then we'll see your comments live and be able to react to it and have a discussion with you too. Was there any other stories you wanted to cover?
No, before that, I was just going to ask you to make the first prediction on the headset. What do you think? Boom or bust?
I'd say if we base it on will it get to the 900,000 units, right? I think it'll be less bust. I don't think it'll reach that.
I think even if it sells that, I don't think that's maybe enough to convince Tim Cook to be like, right, let's get the next one out.
Yeah. And the thing is with Apple, because they're making so much money, is like, they need to innovate still, but they've got less risk on them or less pressure than maybe other companies do. Steven's frozen for me. I don't know if he's frozen for you guys or what's happening here. Okay, he's back.
So I'll leave you with a line on it from Scott Galloway, who I was watching this morning, who is predicting that Apple's headset will be the biggest tech failure. And he says it will officially be the elegant final nail in the coffin of this headset-driven VR consensual hallucination.
Oh, wow. So he's gone bold there. What are your words? What do you think?
I kind of think it might be a mild success, but I'm not convinced Apple's going to follow it up with many more. I think a lot of that depends on what the third-party companies can come up with, because if in most cases Apple doesn't make the uses of the iPhone. It gives you the product, and then the companies come up with the cool apps that we like using. So I think that is going to be the biggest factor.
Yeah.
Is what cool apps can we do on it, and is that the only way to use those apps? And where can I find $3,000 from?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting if there's anybody building apps on the iPhone as well. If they tell us, are they going to try to build apps on VR, or because obviously you need to have a demand for that, right? It's like it's a cycle, right? There's no point in building an app for the VR headset if nobody's using the headset. Sure. So how are they going to incentivize people to do that? Because why waste your time building an app for the VR headset if you can do it for the iPhone instead? And maybe they're going to do something where it's easy to port it across the technology, right? So build an iPhone app, it's easy to make it go onto the AR headset as well. And maybe that could get a lot of content across. But what apps do you currently use that I would rather use that for? Maybe, for example, for like Netflix, for example, watching Netflix where it's a cinematic experience. But would you buy
you can't imagine doing your text messages, right? Or like look at your emails on a virtual device. Like it just doesn't add anything to the experience, does it?
Yeah. And again, if we're wrong, call us out. We want to hear your opinions. This format is on purpose so we can hear what's going on. Next week as well, so this is our first one with me and Stephen. So next week we're going to promote it more because we want to make sure that we got this one right and we didn't have technical difficulties. And that's our MVP, right? But next week you'll see us sharing our own personal accounts as well. And we'll also make a LinkedIn event so that people know what's happening and they can sign up beforehand and you get notified about it rather than it randomly appearing like it did today. But I haven't got much more to add today. Have you got anything?
No, I thought maybe one last thing on the Apple conference. I thought maybe a bit of buzzword bingo. I'm interested to know how many times AI gets mentioned tonight. Like if Apple's going to do the same thing. Like now AI is added into your text messages. Now it's added into your calendar. Now Siri's got AI capability. I wonder how many times we're going to see that said tonight.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't know if you ever had this where you accidentally, if you've got an Apple Watch, we accidentally send the AI generated response and it's really inappropriate. So somebody would just tell you something, you just press like thank you by accident. Like, that wasn't particularly appropriate, but it'll be interesting to see because I think more people as well. We're going to have to close in a second, but have you seen the Dear Intern trend as well? So it was HBO Max. Their intern sent a test integration email to everybody in the newsletter on the email list. So all of the people who were subscribed just got an email saying, with subject line of test integration, that was then empty. And they came out and posted about on the Twitter and said, sorry about the email, it was literally the intern, but don't worry, we're supporting them, we haven't fired them. And then if you want a bit of a laugh, go through the hashtag Dear Intern on Twitter. And some of the stories of people, the mistakes they've made and what they got away with are pretty good. But some people, for example, said that they used ChatGPT to reply to emails and they said some pretty bad things, which I won't mention here, but you can go and discover for yourself.
Nice. A sign of the future of work. ChatGPT response emails. Lovely.
And then ChatGPT on the other side will respond to that email back and it would just be ChatGPT to itself.
Yeah.
But that's all for today.
Thank you. See you later.
Okay.